Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bible Talk, the place where we connect the Bible and everyday life. Today, my guest is Pastor Jay Kim of WestGate Church in San Jose. He's also the author of several books, one of which is this 40 Days in the Book study on Colossians. Man, it is absolutely fantastic. He's also the author of the book Analog Church and Analog Christian, Cultivating Contentment, Resilience, and Wisdom in the Digital Age. We talk about Colossians, we talk about the Word, we talk about his book and how we navigate this digital age. It was one of those conversations that I just didn't want to end. So enjoy my conversation with Pastor Jay Kim. Well, Jay Kim, welcome to Bible Talk. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to
it. We were talking before I hit record between my travel schedule and your pastor and travel schedule. Boy, we've been working, I think, about 6 months to make this conversation happen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well worth it, though. Hopefully.
Right, for sure, for sure. So I would love. I want to dive into a couple different resources you've created that I know I'm really interested in, and I think that this audience would be as well. One is a study that you filmed on Colossians and wrote a book on, and then one is a book called Analog Christian: Cultivating Contentment, Resilience, and Wisdom in the Digital Age. I feel like that could be a 7-hour conversation on its own, but I would love to touch on those two. But before we do, just for those people who haven't met you, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, where you're at. Love to hear a little bit about who is Jay.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah. My name's Jay. I live in San Jose, California, which is kind of right in the heart of Silicon Valley, the southern tip of Silicon Valley, sort of the tech digital age epicenter of the world. You know, the big mothership for Apple is like 10 minutes down the road that way. And I've been here basically my whole life. Wasn't born here. I was born in Korea, but moved to the States when I was really young and before I can remember, with my mom, just single parent home. And when we moved here. We moved to San Jose. So I never left. So I've lived here like almost 40 years, which is so crazy to think about. So yeah, and married to my best friend, Jenny. We've been married. We'll celebrate 15 years here coming up soon. Got 2 young kids. So we're in the throes of, young parenting, young family, and it's madness and a joy. And it's everything. And then my day job, I have the great joy and privilege of serving on staff at a church here in Silicon Valley called WestGate. And I have the opportunity to write and create some stuff that hopefully helps, followers of Jesus. So that's my life. And it's a gift. Life is a gift.
Yeah. For sure. So you're Jay and Jenny. My wife and I are Keith and Carrie. You live 10 minutes from Apple. I live 10 minutes from Microsoft.
Yeah, totally.
And 10 minutes from Google. So we're like,
there you go. Yeah, there you go.
My kids are just a little older, but anyway. So coming over, having a single mom. I know from watching your Colossians study that I think it's in the 3rd episode you talk about the story of your mom seeing you put a glass of water when you were a little kid on the Bible and kind of going, oh, and that leading to you looking at the importance of the Bible as well as also when you fall in love. I like to ask people, when did you first remember seeing the Bible as important and essential, and when did you start to enjoy it and love the Word? Because I know that you have both, and for most people those aren't at the same time.
Yeah,
for many people they believe it's important long before they start to enjoy it. So I'm just curious for you, when did you see it as important and valuable, and do you remember when you started really loving God's Word?
Yeah, I love the distinction you're making with those two questions. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's true for me, where those two things happened at separate times in my life. So I grew up going to church. I grew up, my mother to this day is, one of the most faithful, devoted, passionate followers of Jesus I've ever known. And to this day, and for as long as I can remember, going way back to early childhood, she would begin and end her day in the Word. So I knew really early on that the Bible was valuable. Not because I read about it or I learned that in Sunday school, but because I saw my mother model it. It's one thing to hear a Sunday school teacher tell you, hey, the Bible really matters. The Bible's really important. It's one thing to hear a preacher say that, in our most cynical moments, we might think, well, like, you're paid to say that. Of course you're going to say that, a little sort of like used car salesman sort of vibe.
Right.
The reason I knew the Bible was valuable early on is because it wasn't that. It wasn't at Sunday school or in a sermon primarily. It's that I saw it every day. Now, it wasn't valuable to me. I think that gets to the second part of your question. I just knew it had intrinsic value because I knew my mother. I knew she wasn't dumb. I knew she's highly intelligent, really thoughtful, actually has a bit of, sort of skepticism in her as well. She's not just going to give her time and energy to just any old thing, but I saw her every day feasting on the Word, in the words of Eugene Peterson, she would eat this book. You know what I mean? Like every day, like it was a meal, and she enjoyed it. I mean, I could tell she would have these really moving emotional experiences with no music, without the lights and the sound, just her and a cup of tea and her Bible open at the dining table. I saw it every day. So I knew it was valuable early on. I had that sort of ingrained in me through my experience, but I didn't love it. I didn't see it as valuable for me or to me until my early 20s. When I graduated high school and went to college, I went through what is sadly a very common season of life for many people, which is kind of a deconstruction of faith season, where I just, I threw everything out, the baby with the bathwater, that I just attached my faith to my up and down experiences of church. And I just decided when I was 18, I think that's all nonsense. This whole story of a first century Jewish rabbi dying and coming back to life, there's no way. So I deconstructed faith. But then, long story short, in my early 20s, a few years into that journey, there was a small group of guys, several years older than me, who were part of the church where I had grown up. And, these guys just never gave up on me. They kept inviting me to things. And eventually I started joining them for just kind of a guys hangout on Monday nights. And we would like eat pizza and play video games and watch Monday Night Football. But eventually, most nights, once it hit 9-10 p.m., it would shift from that to conversations about like the real stuff of life. And eventually those times began incorporating the Word. And we read some books, and then we would read scripture and study scripture together. And that was when, I was 21, and that was when the Bible came to life for me in a real way for the first time. And that was 20 years ago. And that began a journey of sort of renewed passion for and desire and longing for the Word. And so, in my early 20s, that's when I really began to fall in love with scripture. And by God's grace, that has not gone away. I am still to this day just as hungry for and passionate about the Bible as I was, 20 years ago.
Well, that's really helpful since you pastor a church and you write Bible studies. So that'd be
right. Yeah, that'd be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Scale of 1 to 10. I see the Bible as a good solid 6. No.
That's right.
So, all right. So I love hearing people's stories and journeys with the Bible for sure. Shifting gears, in the Bible Life community, my online Bible study membership, we just got, at the time of this recording, we just got done yesterday with a 2-month journey through the book of Colossians. And you and I were introduced over email 6 months ago when you
Yeah.
had released this study, the 40 days through the book of Colossians, and it's one Jesus, one people. And tell us about that study. What drew you to Colossians, and what was it like? Kind of that study process. Kind of who's it for? I mean, give
Yeah.
us the overview of that, because I've seen, I've taken a look at it, and I've seen half of the videos, because I don't want to just consume it too fast. I want
Yeah.
to soak in it a bit and hear somebody else's perspective, having just taught through Colossians. But I'd just be curious to hear kind of what that's been, because I just love Colossians. I love it.
Yeah. Me too. I was drawn to Paul's letter to the Colossian Christians because as I began studying it, I realized there were such strong parallels to the issues at hand for those early Christians in the city of Colossae that Paul is trying to address in the letter, and the issues at hand for us as followers of Jesus today. I was just like, holy smokes, I can't believe this was happening 2,000 years ago on the other side of the planet in a culture and a language totally distinctly different than ours today. I mean, they were struggling with very similar things. And what I mean by that is Colossae, you know this already, Keith, but Colossae, the city at the time, was a really pluralistic city. So, traditional Orthodox Judaism flourished there in Colossae, but it also flourished right alongside a variety of local religions, local pagan religions, as well as the sort of national empire pagan religions of the Roman Empire as well. So the early church in Colossae, the first followers of Jesus, they were primarily all really, if you think about the context of the day, they were converts to Christianity from another significant religious tradition. And what was happening because of that, most scholars agree, they call it the Colossian heresy, even though there's debate about what specifically the heresy was.
Right.
There is widespread agreement that what Paul is doing is he's confronting and addressing the Colossian heresy, which was essentially these new followers of Jesus had imported a wide variety of religious beliefs and traditions from their previous religious traditions. And they were sort of mapping on and projecting on all of these things that were really not founded on Jesus and his teachings into the new Christian church that was being birthed there. And Jesus was losing his place as central to the Christian movement. It was just this hodgepodge, almost buffet style religion, and they had slapped the name, of Jesus onto it. And Paul's addressing that. And he's essentially saying, no, you guys, you don't get it. Jesus is the center. It's all about Jesus and Jesus alone. He alone is the way and the truth and the life, as he himself proclaimed in John 14. And so as I studied the context, I realized, oh my goodness, that's the dilemma we face today. So many followers of Jesus slap on the label of Christian and then concoct and create this entire sort of religious system or worldview or belief system based on a wide variety of things that they've imported into their Christian faith, when in reality, it doesn't work like that. Following Jesus is not Chipotle. You don't just get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You just get Jesus and the way of Jesus as the scriptures, as the Bible presents it to us, and as it comes to life in our own lives, as the Spirit of God generates and animates the life of the Christian. So as I began digging deep into the context and the history of the city and what was happening in that cultural moment, I just realized, man, I think this text has so much to say to us today, which really began the process for me.
Yeah. It's so practical. I remember somebody years ago, I mean, I was probably in my 20s, and I heard somebody say, every Christian should soak in the book of Romans, but if you ever don't have a full hour and you've got 20 minutes, read Colossians. Because there's this theological richness combined with the practical life application that is, so much of what we find in the theological richness of Romans 1 through 11, and then the life application of 12 through 16. And I find that I've heard several different people since then say, yeah, Colossians, the mini Romans, and that culture and the battle of that. And maybe it will kind of bridge our Colossians conversation with your book, because I haven't read your book yet, in all transparency. But looking at even reading descriptions of it and what the title is and the analog Christian, I look at that and just wonder, what does that have some parallel to what you're seeing in Colossians and how to live that out? We can make that a totally separate conversation if you want, but I'm looking at how would you encourage people in a culture, whether they're in the Bay Area, in Seattle, or somewhere else, where we're surrounded with so many ideas, and spirituality is okay. Spirituality is celebrated, but Jesus, I'm not sure we can focus on Jesus. How would you encourage somebody to I use the phrase, to make the truth louder than the world's lies? How do we do that?
Yeah. I definitely think the digital age and the internet age and the era of social media and news media that is so accessible, the 24/7 news cycle that is a recent phenomena in the last, couple of decades or so, all of those things, they've created a world in which you're exactly right. There is so much, there's a lot of talk about misinformation and disinformation, but it runs much deeper than that. I think there is a sort of subversion of the idea of truth as a whole.
Oh, for sure.
So you think about the Oxford Dictionary, every year they pick a word of the year. 7 years ago in 2016, Oxford Dictionary's word of the year was post-truth. And they picked the word of the year as a word that best and most accurately and dynamically defines the sort of cultural air we are breathing in that particular year. And it was post-truth in 2016. And that's only increased in the last 7 years or so. We live in a post-truth world, meaning we live in a my truth world. You hear that a lot. This is my truth, or it's true for me. What's true for you is true for you. This is true for me. Which, if you think about the definition of truth, it's a paradox that doesn't work. If something is true, then it just is true. It can't possibly be true for you, but not true for me. So along those lines, I think the era in which we find ourselves, again, the digital age, the internet age, the era of social and news media, is really problematic because it has created a sort of insular, I can curate my own digital experience, and that becomes my reality. Well, that's really problematic when you read Paul's words in like the opening chapter of Colossians, when he talks about Jesus and says that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. He's the firstborn. It says, in him all things were created. Jesus is before everything. In him everything holds together. He's the head of the church. In everything, Jesus has supremacy. It makes me think of C.S. Lewis's famous words: either Jesus was and is the Son of God, or else he's a madman or something worse. You can shut Jesus up for a fool, you can spit at him, or you could kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. There's no in between. Jesus's claim is, again, John 14, he says, I am, singular, he and he alone. Jesus is the way, he is the truth, and he is the life. No one comes to God the Father except through him. That's Jesus's claim. So there is no sprinkling a little bit of Christ into your sort of mishmash of religious tradition that you've made. If you want to experience life and life to the full, if you want to experience eternity in God's kingdom and belonging in God's family, Jesus is the way. That's it. And that is really offensive in a culture like ours. But it is Jesus's claim. And so we can shut him up for a fool and just say, what an idiot. Or we can bow and call him king and pledge our allegiance to him. So, yeah, I think there are such strong parallels to even what the first Christians in Colossae were going through, and much of what we are facing today in the digital age, because of all of the ways in which the internet and social media and news media are forming us, and really, I would say, deforming us from
Right.
being the people of God.
Oh, that's a good word. So in a kind of uber practical way, when you're talking to somebody, let's say that there's somebody who isn't poo-pooing that, isn't saying, oh, I'm not affected by social media or whatever, but is saying, okay, I, as a follower of Jesus, I want to get some insight from you on how to navigate that, how to live in the digital age, in this world of many, many voices and many, many truths. Uh, how on a day by day, it could be as simple as how you start your day. It could be what parameters you put around these, these devices that we hang out with. What advice would you have for not just the people who have grown up in the digital age? Because a lot of people think this is a problem for people that are 15 to 30. And I'm like, or the people that are 40 to 60 who are standing on the sidelines, not watching their kids play soccer because they're checking a Facebook post. I mean,
yeah,
so
or the 4 billion people on the planet who have social media.
right,
Like, this is not
right.
an age problem. This is an everybody problem.
For sure, for sure. So how do we start to navigate that? What's the baby step for somebody who hears this conversation and goes, okay, I want to navigate this well, and I don't even know how to start. What would be your advice for them?
This is not an idea that's original to me. I first heard it from Andy Crouch, who is a brilliant Christian leader, thinker, who's written extensively about this. But parent your phone. That's what I would say. Don't let your phone parent you. Make sure that your phone is something you use for and with good intention, instead of allowing your phone to be a thing that forms you into its image. That's what I would say. Put the tool in its proper place. There's lots of practical ways to do that. Make sure your phone goes to bed before you do. Make sure you wake up and spend some time with the Lord and with scripture and your family or whatever before you spend time with your phone. Put limits on social media and news media. I would suggest to you, this might sound extreme for some, but either delete social media altogether or delete it from your phone. When it's not as easily accessible in your back pocket, over time, you will find yourself going to it less, and you will find yourself all the better for it. My wife hasn't had any social media for 4 or 5 years, and she's like, I do not miss it one bit. I cannot even imagine going back. That sounds horrific. So yeah, there's a number of things you could do, but that's what I would say. Parent your phone. Don't let it parent you. Use your phone for and with good intention, instead of allowing your phone to form you into someone you don't want to become.
That's good. That concept. I've heard some of the ideas in that, but that idea of parenting your phone and not letting it form you, that is a kind of an overarching perspective that I think leads to a lot of practical, practical insight. So, so shifting gears specifically to your book, I was drawn, analog Christian. Oftentimes it's the subtitle that makes me go, okay, this is a book I need to read. And when I look, cultivating contentment, resilience, and wisdom in the digital age, contentment, resilience, and wisdom. I don't know a whole lot of people that are like, I think we've pretty much got those three covered. Everybody, pretty much most people I know are content, and there are no babies out there. They're pretty resilient. I mean, I just look at those and I'm like, okay, I don't know anybody who could see this book and go, yeah, I don't need this at all. So good job on titling and subtitling, by the way. But walk us through a little bit about what, how is this book structured? Who's your ideal reader? and
Yeah.
how does it help them out?
Yeah, my ideal reader is any human with a smartphone,
Okay.
to be honest, because what the data tells us is US adults specifically, we spend 4 hours a day. The average US adult spends 4 hours a day on their smartphone. Now, that might be shocking to most people, but if you actually kept track, you'd be shocked at how much you spend time on your
Oh yeah.
smartphone. Um, the average social media user will spend 5 entire lives, like literally 5 entire years of their lives, solely on social media. So you think about how pervasive it is. And specifically for followers of Jesus, you spend that much time on one thing, it is forming and shaping you into a particular type of person. So that's what I wrote the book for. And the way the book is structured and organized, um, it's really a book that explores Paul's words in Galatians 5 when he talks about the fruit of the Spirit and these beautiful sort of markers, attributes, characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit as the Spirit of God does his work in us. The characteristics and the virtues and attributes that God's Spirit forms in us and cultivates in us. That's really how the book is structured. And I juxtapose each of those characteristics: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control over and against one of the significant symptoms of the digital age. So love instead of self-centric despair, joy instead of comparison, peace instead of contempt, patience instead of impatience, and on and on. So that's how the book is structured. And I structured it that way, one, because it was a really helpful way for me to begin addressing my own digital addictions. And two, it's accessible, and I think to your point, all of us see those things and we resonate immediately. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, comparison is a real big problem for me. Or impatience. I find myself so incredibly impatient. Or outrage. I talk about gentleness instead of outrage. Everybody can relate. Like, we live in an outrage culture.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so that's how the book is structured. And yeah, I do hope it's helpful to people.
For sure. Oh yeah. So I love that. I love that. The fruits of the Spirit. I just recently read somebody talking about how the gifts of the Spirit can come slowly or come quickly, but fruit by its very nature needs to be cultivated. And it's something, and we want the fruits of the Spirit as quickly as God sometimes offers the gifts of the Spirit. And that
Yeah,
idea
that's so good.
of cultivating and growing and nurturing love, joy, peace, patience. That's something, not only are we a rage culture, an impatient culture, everything, we're give it to me now. We're a fast food culture and an instant culture. And so that idea of cultivating these things
Yeah,
is both counterintuitive and spot on.
yeah,
That
100%.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, oh man, I feel like we could have a whole multi-hour masterclass on this. So let me ask you before we land the plane, what do you feel like God is showing you right now? Do you have either a Bible study or a book or a project that you're working on right now that you're like, this is something that I'm not ready to teach on yet, but I'm just chewing on and thinking about, and what could we be looking for you in a year or 9 months?
Yeah, it's great. I do have another book coming out
Oh,
in
you
the
do?
spring of 2024, and it sort of continues this idea. It's just called Listen, Listen, Speak, Hearing God and Being Heard in a Noisy World. So that's something I've given a lot of thought to, again, continuing the conversation about all the noise that surrounds us and just how loud and chaotic and cacophonous it can be. More recently, I'm thinking a lot about the possibility of living life with God everywhere, all the time. What does it look like to live life with a deep, abiding awareness of his presence? And how does that change everything? How does that change and shift our perspective, and our approach, the way we see one another, as well as ourselves. So those are some of the big ideas that I'm journeying through right now.
Yeah, that idea of, I love, and just so everyone watching this, that was not a tee up. I did not know Jay had a book coming out, but I will be making a note to reach out to you next April.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Talk through that. Yeah, that idea, that's interesting, because the idea of abiding and remaining and soaking. The number of times people want, if somebody's watching this and you're looking for an interesting word study, look at the number of times in the Gospel of John that you read abide and remain and stay.
Yeah.
There's just this dwelling that I think that we don't do well.
Yeah.
Because we want it too fast. So I love that.
Right.
I love that. So Jay, where can people connect with you if people want to find out more about your books or about the Colossians study, maybe for their small group or something like that, or just want to hear more about the speaking that you do, and they don't live in the Bay Area, so not coming to WestGate. So
yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I have a little website. It's just jkimthinks.com. And if you go there, most of my work is there, and my email address is there. So we'd love to hear from you if there's anything I could do to help. And most of my work is available there. It'll have links to books I've written and teachings I've done and things like that.
That's great. Well, one thing I love to do at the end of these Bible Talk episodes is ask some random questions that have nothing to do with what we're talking about, just to get to know you a little bit. Are you okay for a little rapid fire?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. All right. So what is your favorite day off activity?
Oh, gosh, that's a great. I'm a city dweller. I'm extreme. So I'm a city dweller, or I'm like a national park, giant, huge, expansive thing. My wife and I are just the other day, we're planning a trip out to Moab, Utah to go visit Arches National Park. We were just out there last year to go to Zion. So if they weren't so far away, that would probably be my choice. Yosemite's the nearest. I've got the redwoods and the sequoias here, but even that's like an hour away. But if there was some epic national park super close, I'd probably be there every Friday.
You need to come up to Seattle, and we'll go hiking in the North Cascades.
Oh gosh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, there's some beautiful stuff up there too. So or I'm also a city dweller. I really like big cities, and so a day off for me, just the peace and quiet of the chaos of a city is fun for me too. So I'll do every now and then, I'll drive up to San Francisco, which is about 45 minutes from here, and grab a good cup of coffee and a lunch somewhere and a good book and sit and just bathe in the chaos of a big city. San Jose, where I live, is also a big city, almost 1 million people, and 10 million people, almost 10 million people in the greater Bay Area, but it doesn't have that big giant city feel. Every summer my wife and I take the kids to New York, got some family out there, and I love that, just sitting in the shadow of the tall buildings. So
all right, so another one. Here's a quick one. Your favorite pizza toppings. You're getting a 3-topping pizza that only you're going to eat. You don't have to share it with anybody. What's on it?
Yeah. Extra mozzarella cheese. I really like my pizza super cheesy. This is a weird one. If I could have my choice, I would actually rather go barbecue sauce than like marinara, tomato sauce. It's weird, but I'm a big barbecue sauce pizza guy. And then salami, big salami guy on my pizza. So
nice. All right. Yeah. What here? I got 2 more for you. What how did you spend your free time as a kid? Were you a sports guy? Were you a music guy? Were you a tech guy? What?
Yeah, most of those things. So when I was a really little kid, I spent a lot of time drawing. Once I got to middle school, I was on a basketball court with a basketball in my hand 24/7. I was hooping all day, every day. And then as I got into my later high school years, I kept playing basketball on into college in my 20s, but I got really big into music. So played in several very mediocre local bands in my late teens, early 20s. And so there you go. Yeah, all of those things.
Right. Last one. What is a biblical event other than the resurrection that you would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for?
Whoa, what a question. Probably the Transfiguration. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that for a number of reasons.
Yeah,
would have been pretty epic, I think. Yeah.
And then been like, yeah, I probably would have been right there with Peter. What can we build to make this happen instead?
Totally. Yeah, totally. That's exactly right.
Great.
That's
Oh,
exactly
well,
right.
Jay, this has been fantastic. I so appreciate you and your heart for the word and love for Colossians and for people and kind of helping people navigate this. You're doing important work. I think God rejoices over what you're doing and the way you do it. So thank you so much.
Oh gosh, that means a lot, Keith. Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode of Bible Talk. Bye.